Okay.
Okay, so I started recording. Okay, so I'll this session will be like roughly an hour. If it goes more than an hour, I think I'll split it in two. If you want to go into more advanced stuff, the advanced stuff is kind of related to 3ds Max 8, not really to Blender, but I know you can find similarities. However, the technical part of how you could do that, it's it's more technical. So you need to watch other stuff, not from me. But I can give you the idea behind it and stuff like that. Okay, so I'll be focusing on character animation. What I have already did. If you know or if you have seen some stuff that I did like a pretty much Legolas 75% scratch. It was like a very hardcore process. Then I think my friend wheel was like the most animated on. And I'll just share with you what I learned along the way and whatever stuff.
Exciting.
Okay. Yeah, so slight overview. The importing exporting part. I'll just real quick through this for the masked users. Then the We3D format, which is, if you have 3ds Max, you can use this to advantage. Other way, you can use whatever you have in Blender for similar tools. Then I identify like 3 steps or 3 kinds of animating, or let's say when you're modding something that already exists, you have like 3 cases that identify. You either change an already existing animation, and we're gonna talk about that. Then create a new animation based on a skeleton that already exists in the game, which is, a common case in my experience. Then creating your SQLs and what to watch for when you do this. And when you do your own SQL, that means you basically have to do all your animations from scratch at that point, or almost from scratch. So that's why I'll talk about that as well. And then if we have times, we can go to tips, tricks, and common cases. And also some advanced rigging. If we're like on the end of the stream, I can talk just a little bit, and if you want, I can go into more details in a following video if you want. Anyway, I'll try to give examples on all these stuff. Okay, so first of all, the way the 3ds Max importer does work, I think Blender is kind of in the same area, but only Middle-earth 1 animations can be imported, which is kind of a bummer. However, NDC, which is a great guy, did some conversions for the Battle Formula 2 animations, and you can download them. There are most of the Battle Formula 2 ones in there, so you can just grab them. I put the link in here. I'll just share it there as well.
Sorry, question. Isn't it for NDC's newest version of the W3D importer? Didn't that kind of fix the Battle Formula 2 animations issue?
I haven't tried it. However, this is like the next thing if you don't have that. Indeed,
Okay.
I don't use his importer, I use an older one, which does import the rigging part, not the animation. But yeah, I could try that as well. However, I have this, and it's kind of the same thing. Yeah. And also, you need to have like Middle-earth 1 animations, not like Middle-earth 1 animations from Middle-earth 2. Actually be a Middle-earth 1 folder because of the compression that was done on them, and the older one and stuff. But I'll take a note here and maybe check his importer. If it works, then maybe I can update this. Okay, and I can show you a bit about how what settings you can use. Usually what I do is I'll just start 3ds Max real quick. Okay, it's on the other screen. Can you see my 3ds Max?
Yes.
Yeah, nice. As you can see, it's a very high res. Can you actually read what's saying here?
Yeah, I can.
I can.
Nice, amazing. So that won't be a problem. Okay, that's not a thing then. I'll just quickly open something. I'll open Legolas. I haven't thought about what actually I'm gonna use here, but I think Legolas is like a great example. Oh yeah, one of the problems I have on Windows 11 actually the File Explorer, which I cannot open. If I open, it will crash. So I need to actually introduce the path to go there. Okay. But let me open an animation. I think that was the real intent of this. I have my scenes here. You don't see it, but I see it on another screen. Okay, so this is like one of the idle animations for Legolas, which is
Nice.
which is ready to be exported. It's already baked and all that stuff. This was used using a different technique, which I will not cover, and I also won't recommend it. Because I think with keyframes it's a lot easier. Okay.
Sorry, can I have a question?
Sure. Ask away.
Is this an advanced class?
No, it's kind of basic.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, I won't go through the details of using 3ds Max, but I'm getting through the basic of how you could animate. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Okay, so this is like, I'll just say, and when you want to export it, the key thing is you'll use pure animation. I'll get into more stuff later, but what you want to do is use pure animation and also introduce the skeleton you'll be using. This is a very important part. And also the frames you want, because sometimes maybe in your project you have like 1000 frames, you have like free animation, and you need to focus on those you export. And usually the 0 frame is in 3ds Max at least, is kind of like a default state, so we never use that. So those go through 1, 2 until what frame you need. Also keeping in mind that it needs to be loopable. Most of your animations need to end how they started, because otherwise they will not be synced. And what I do use for compression is time coded. Sometimes it doesn't work, and I just use the key reduction and I force it. But usually if you go like key reduction 50% without the reduction and time coded is a good enough compression. Otherwise, if you don't use compression, then your animation will look jittery, kind of like you see the frames in it, and that's why we use compression. Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, that's kind of fun. That's a bug with 3ds Max. If you open the compression settings, you cannot remove this thing.
Of course. Luckily, I don't need this window anymore. Yeah, I'm still learning the Windows 11 problems.
No, this is really just a 3ds Max thing, or at least W3D imported problem. I have the same problem whenever I do.
I know on Windows 10 it was working all right.
Really?
Because I did this a lot. Yeah, on 10 it was. I think update problems.
Interesting. Yeah, I used the 10 as well, but I get that problem too. So it's interesting.
Okay.
I think yeah. Continue.
Yeah. And for the import part, yeah, it's not a big deal. It's just you need to, like I said, you have a Middle-earth 1 animation, or if you have like a newer importer, maybe that works, and you can import your stuff. And that's where everything kind of starts. Okay, a little bit about the V3D format. And when I'm talking about this is what options you have in the VDD 3D options. I think it's Mac specific. I know Blender has some stuff. So I'll just go quick through the stuff. It opens in the other window as well. Okay, so what I'm talking about, if we go here to the hammer, then more, we have the V3D tools, assuming you imported the SDK. And you have these options. So basically you have these buttons, select bones, select geometry, which I use consistently. However, when you import stuff, it's not always how it should. Sometimes, I mean most of the times, the geometry you import will also be flagged as animation, as bones. So usually you have to get rid of that. How you do that is if you select, all the items you want, you have here these options to export transform. They say like bone, but transform basically means the animation part of it, the keyframes, the actual motion, and then the geometry. So when you're working with animation, you need to be very careful to select the transform parts. You might have stuff, for example, that you don't want to export. For example, if I take, I don't know if this one has, I'm trying to find an animation that actually has something with swords. Okay, so this is basically a very complex rig that I use for Legolas. And I want to export just the animation part. So if you look here, I click the geometry part of him, which is like this face. And I have nothing selected. If you have nothing selected, nothing will be exported, which is very handy if you work with animations. However, the bow bone, which should be a bone here, but I didn't animate it because I didn't really need to know where it is in this particular animation. You can see it has the transform selected. So the helper part, as you can see, this is like some shapes I used. This is like more advanced stuff, but just giving an example. These have nothing selected because I'm not interested in these. I'm interested in the actual bone, which is bone cape 8, and we have the export. So you can play around a lot with this. If I select the bones and hide everything else, you can see just this will be exported, nothing else. I think in Blender it should be easier to just hide the stuff that you don't need and export the stuff that you have selected. In 3ds Max with the import and kind of tricky, and this is like a nice thing to have. Okay. And now my Max has this problem.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. For a while it was gone, but I think it depends on one menus. When I'm modeling stuff, it doesn't appear. It's just when I open these fancy windows. Okay. Actually, I wanted to show one more thing you can do in 3ds Max. Again, in Blender might be a bit different. I know for sure in 3D Maya you can't do this, but in Max you can. Which is, let me use again the 3D tools and just select the bones, hide and selected. What you can do, for example, if you're working on a skeleton, right? Don't be afraid to actually move the bones in another position. For example, if you have like a very long cape for some reason, you can move the bones without affecting the animation itself. So the bones will still be animated in place, but they will have like a new global position. That's the whole tricky part. So you can do this. This is very handy when you're trying to like change some animation. Okay, this is very weird because you have, but if I select the pelvis or the root dummy, okay, this is all in the same. But you can do this. What you can't do is if you go into animating mode, which I will show a bit later. But if you like start to put keyframes, if you move them, you'll see the position is not absolute, is relative to what the key you put there. So if I remove the key and put it there, you know, this is something I use like 100% of the time. If I want to import stuff from another 3D model or another animation that uses capes, which is usually what I did to most of my stuff, I use this technique where, let's say, the bones came from another animation, from the cape. So what I'll do, I'll just position them. If, for example, if they were here when I imported them, if I move them here, then it will be consistent with my 3D model. Obviously, this is not what I did here. But, you know, this is a common case I used. It's like I added capes to my 3D models. And in order to do that, I just imported some bones, renamed them, and place it next to my model. But you have to be careful. You need to be a 3D model that's kind of the same topology as the one you're changing. Okay, I think I've spoken enough about this. Any questions until here?
Nope.
It's clear.
Nice, awesome. Okay, and also you can scale them. This is thing I did. For example, my tutorial model was using a very short SQL, which was the Corsair one, and her other toggle, the bow one, was, let's say, larger. Lucky for me, they were using the same skeleton as Haldir's ones, which I was using for her bow animations. And what I end up doing, sorry, is you can just select these guys, group them. When you group something, you're basically making like a fake one object, which is very nice if you want to move stuff around without, you know, moving each part individually or, you know, rotating them and, you know, having weird rotations. I'll right click here and I'll just snap to grid points. So basically this snaps to grid points, and I'll just affect pivot only. Okay, this is very okay, it doesn't, it's not, okay, now there we go. So basically what I did is like the pivot, which is like the base of the 3D model, is here, and now I can just scale it. And usually I use these. So if I want to scale it 30%, it would be like okay, let's make it smaller. Okay, I'm not on scale, so it's like 70%. And as you can see, it's smaller and it still keeps the animation. Obviously, these two bones that you see flying around, it's because they're not linked to each other. So you need to be careful with these ones. Usually you need to animate them separately. But as you can see, I used the body and I scaled it down. So now I kept all the animation in place. Okay, right. And then you need to ungroup it. Otherwise, the Wii3D exporter might complain about it. But let's get into actual animation, because these are more like tips and tricks I really wanted you to see This will be recorded so you can rewatch it anytime when you get to this part. But this is like an intro to actual animation. Okay. Right, so the first case I was talking about. Let's change an already existing animation using keyframes. So keyframe animation is like the most basic you'll see. You'll probably find a lot of tutorial on how to do keyframe animation, so I will not focus too much on that. However, I want to show you my process because that's mostly what I've been asked or how I do things. So I'll show you how I prepare for an animation and what kind of tools I use in 3ds Max, but all of them can be used in Blender as well, I'm pretty sure. Okay, so I've talked a bit about the import part. So one key thing is try to touch only the parts you want to change. This is important because you need to have consistency with the other animations that you do not change. So basically what I mean is if you change the idle animation, you have to have in mind that you might affect the transition to other animations like attack. Well, idle is kind of a heavy case because all units default to idle. It's like the default animation. So let's say if you want to change the attack animation, try to change only the parts that you're interested in. For example, if you have like, you want to strike with 2 hands instead of 1, just put the other hand on the weapon and don't change anything else. Okay. What is important is do not move the animation, the bones of the skeleton around, because that will desynchronize with the other animations. And also you cannot add new bones, so don't try adding new bones, because at the end of the day, as I showed you, when you export, you need to actually select the skeleton that you need to use. So if you add new bones, they will not be recognized and an error will be thrown. So don't try to add new stuff. If you want to add new stuff, you kind of have to make a new skeleton and change all the animation basically, unless it's a bone that's used for a specific state, like, I don't know, you have a horn animation and just animate that. Okay, and this is the part I was trying to get. Add additional rigs if needed. So rigging, it's called rigging in most of 3D stuff. And better Formula 2 will probably see rigging as binding the skeleton to the bones, which I will not showcase here. There should be like a different process. But what I want to show you is I'm gonna try and open not Legolas this time, but heavy soldiers. Okay, from the mod I'm currently working. Because those guys were actually changing animations that already exist. Let me see. Okay, I think I have something. Let me see if this is one. Okay, not a good example. Nope. Interesting. I'm trying to find one that has some. Hello, welcome. Welcome to the madness.
Oh no. Sounds not that good,
Okay.
but it looks good.
Yeah, it's bittersweet. Okay, so I found some animation that are actually some controllers. This is like the run animation for the heavy archers of Mirkwood, which go like this. Okay, so as you can see, we have like all these lines here. This is what usually you have to change. Okay, maybe I can show you a better one. I forget that most of the times I redo the animations. Okay, now this is a different thing. Oh, I see. These are scenes that are used to import animation from other parts. Nope. Okay, we'll do it live. Okay. I'll just open Boromir run. I think it was here. Run. Okay. So at this stage, you just opened an animation that already exists. This is Boromir's run animation. And let's say you are very annoyed for the fact that this arm goes way too much in the back or in the front. One of the key things you can do is, well, you can go here and you can see the keyframes. So this is there are basically the keyframes. And let's say you want to delete them. I will delete all of them, which is this bone. Okay, I don't want his right shoulder to move. And it kind of moves weird, and then you need to go here and delete all of these as well. Okay, and now kind of moves like something. And now you can also animate. If you want to animate, let's say I press auto key. What auto key does is basically if you do a change to this bone, it will automatically be recorded. If you don't want that, you can just press this key and it will make a key on this particular element, which is this one. But I usually auto key because it changes just the keys that I change. Green keys mean rotations. Red keys means positions, so you change the position from one frame to another. And the last one is the blue one, which is the scale. Do not touch the scales. Usually don't change the scales while in animation. It's bad practice. And you'll have weird issues with it. Also, Battle Formula 2 do not support them, so don't use them. But what you are trying to do is try not to use translations. So don't try to move the keys, right? Only rotate, because that's how human body actually works. So human bones, our bones never move; they actually rotate. So that's what you have to have in mind. You'll see this in other tutorials. If you look on keyframe animation, you'll see that people usually won't move because it's something that doesn't happen in real life. And also it gives you like a clean overview of your animation if you just use rotations. The only time I actually use transform if I'm doing like an idle animation where I exaggerate his chest movement, which is very hard to do just with rotations. So, for example, okay, this will be very bad. Don't do this at home, but I'll remove this. As you notice, I always keep the first one and the last one because I want my animation to be loopable. Anyway, so what I do if I want to give like he's going up and then he's going down, I'm actually looking to this foot when I'm doing this, also his pelvis. So this is the only time I actually use movements. So you can see now I have red keys here. Kind of weird. Okay, but going back to, I want this Boromir to have a very particular way of moving his hand. One of the first thing we can do is we can create an IK. IK means inverse kinematic. Basically, we're controlling 3 bones with just one controller. To do this, I'll select this bone. I'll go to animations, IK solvers, and I'll use the IK limb solver. In Blender, it's probably called something similar. It definitely has IK in the name, but it's probably called something rather similar. Okay, now you can see there's a link between this bone and this bone. And watch what happens now. This bone remains in place because I told it to follow this controller. And now this bone will act automatically based on this position of this bone. Pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is like the most basic thing you'll learn in animation, which helps you tremendously if you want to change this kind of stuff. I'm not working with the 3D model also, I'm working just with animation. If you want to make something quick, this should be okay. But if you want to see like how the hand position impacts your 3D model, you'll do like you've seen with the heavy Mirkwood soldier, when I actually have also the mesh rigged to the bone, so I can see exactly where the mesh is going. Okay, I tried to move it without setting keys, so that was bad. I'm going back to keyframe. Okay, so this gives you a lot of control at this point. Let's say I want him to grab his horn. I imagine there's his horn there. And now when he's moving, you'll keep the hand there. And also, the hand will keep animating. What you have to note here is that the keyframes here on... okay, I have lock selection for some reason. The keyframes here and here, even if you didn't delete them, they will be ignored because the IK controller will override them.
Okay.
So this is to keep in mind when if you are wondering why it's not moving a certain way, it's because they are overwriting this stuff. Okay, and what you can do, for example, when if you want to keep it sync, what I do is, okay, he's grabbing his purse or something, it's his horn. When the animation goes up in this place, I look for the most extreme key. So next frame he's going down, so I want this one, and I move using the auto key. I move it there, and then he goes back. When he goes back, so now we have this animation. When he goes back, you either get it back like there, using this. Okay, kinda in his. Or in 3ds Max, you can copy keys. In 3ds Max, you can use shift. So I click this one. I'll delete this one using delete. I can click this one. It's highlighted with white. I press shift and I just drag it. So now I have a copy of this key here as well. So now as you can see, it goes down. And I'll do the same thing here with the 7th key. And then this one, I want to be loopable, so I place it last. So my animation ends the way it started. Huh? Pretty cool, right?
Very nice.
Okay, so this is like your first lesson. You know now how to change the position of the arm. You can do the same thing with the legs, because legs function basically the same thing. However, if you want to try to change the movement, how the legs work, it's heavier stuff than actually, you know, changing the arm position, because if you want to make a walk cycle or a run cycle, it's kind of heavier. So I recommend it using for like I don't know, a stance when you select him, so he changes a bit his legs. But if you want to do a new run animation, definitely use IKs. But beware, you need to animate all the positions. I'll just show you an example right now. I'll go back to the bow attack. Okay, I think I had the run one, which was a better example. So as you can see, I also have IKs here. And this is like the walk. It's a bit jiggly, I admit. It's not my best work. But it's good enough in game, so I just kept it like that. And you can see these are the keyframes. You need to animate just the controller. Like I said, ignore the other bones in the IK. You need to animate just the controller. And these are the keys. So you need to make sure the foot is in this position and then in this position and all that. What I use, as you can see, this is the Haldir run animation. And I use this for reference for the position of the legs. So what usually you would do is go to the side and follow his footsteps. Of course, your skeleton might be different, so they will not perfectly align, but you can use it to have the same movement. So as you can see, I set my foot will not go as further as Haldir has. He has like a more alert type of movement, and I wanted something more, I don't know, like a ballet. I don't know how to say it. It's like more fluid in its movement. So that's why I didn't make like dramatic changes from one foot to the other. He's kind of like walking through the leaves, just gently moving his legs. Something that can help you, I use it a lot on the, speaking of controllers, I use it a lot in the changing of the position of this one. So if I open again Boromir Run, let's say I do make an IK. IK Solver's Limp. I do make an IK, and now we will run. Okay, he's more like skating now. Okay, but usually if I want to change the legs or the movement of the legs, you need to also play with the root dummy. The root dummy is like the root, obviously. That's why it's called the root dummy. So basically where the whole body skeleton goes. So if I move it like this, you'll see the whole thing works. But if you have a 3D model over, as you can see, it will be very hard to select this one. So what we usually do is make a shape. I'll go like to shapes. and circle. In Blender, it's probably the same thing. Sometimes they'll call the nurbs. I know in Maya they are called nurbs. Basically, there are like shapes. And this is another type of constraint that you can use to prepare your skeleton for animation, is to link this bone to this shape. And you can do here, you can do select and link. So I'll just grab here and link. And now if I go to auto key, I can control this bone with the shape I just created. And this is very useful if you want to change the motion of what you're doing here. So I'll set the key here. Then I'll say like, no, you're going back in time. Then you're going up. It's very trippy what's happening here. Okay, I'll change this bone because I don't want to change it. So now it's just this. So the whole root dummy is defined by how this shape works. So basically like a parent. If you know like some, I don't know, basic game development and stuff, it's like a parenting. You're parenting this stuff to the other. Kind of like the bones, you know? If I move this bone, the whole hierarchy will move. Kind of the same thing. Only you're just parenting one object to this. Sometimes.
I have a question.
Sure.
How do you animate single bones like the shield? Because they are not parented to the hands, but they have quite the same animations.
Mm-hmm. So you mean these ones that are flying around? Yes. You have two options. You either animated them as they are. Actually, three options, but I'll talk about two. Which I did that sometime, but it gets very, very annoying at one point because it's like you need to mimic all the movement that you have. But what you can do, luckily for you, is you do the same thing with the pairing that I just explained, only there's a specific controller you need to use. For example, I'll place this one. I'll just delete. This is like a shield. Okay, it's the shield. So it goes into a default position. What you can do is bring this here. Oh, it's not what it should be at all, because this is the default position in the skeleton. Yep. Always keep the first frame. Don't be dumb like me. Always keep the first frame. Okay, so this is like the first frame. If we go, it stands. And what I'll do is go to animation, constraint, link constraint. So basically what this does is makes a fake link between this bone and this bone, like it's parented.
I see.
And now it's very easy to animate. So basically you need to find the first frame. You go to the first frame and just use this constraints, link constraint. And that's exactly the same thing as parenting. The difference though, and that's why I want to show you this. So now you have a link constraint. I can see it here, right? In Max, it's here on the modifiers. I can delete it. So now it's back there. Don't use this, because this will create the hierarchy. And if you're changing an animation, it's kind of like I said, you're adding bones to it. So don't do that. So if I do this, you'll see it creates the hierarchy. Yeah. Don't do that. If you want just to change, if you're doing your own skeleton, do this. Yes, it's much easier. However, if you have an animation that he, drops his weapons, it will be a bit harder to do that. But if you link bones like this, it will create the hierarchy. And it's kind of strange. Always use link. But for this,
I assume Blender has a similar option.
most likely, undoubtedly, will have this option. I can search it right now if you're actually link.
Yeah, if you
constraint.
want. So it's up to you.
Link constraint. I'm used to answering stuff I do not know. Okay, so it has constraints. Okay. I think in some cases called parent constraint. If I'm not, yeah,
Okay,
it's either link constraint is in Max, but I think usually it's called parent constraint because it creates like a parent for it, and it just mimics it.
okay, thanks.
Yeah, apparently there's a constraint menu in Blender, so you should look up to that. Kind of like here, constraints.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I have two questions as well.
Perfect.
So the shield is now link constraint. Do I have to bake each frame before exporting it, or does it automatically export the link?
Good question. In 3ds Max, you don't need to because it's baked when it's exported. However, if it doesn't, yes, you should bake it before export. But a word of caution: don't save the bake. Just bake it, export it, see if it's okay, but keep it in the state before bake so you can add changes without rebaking all of the stuff. Because yes, it will just create frames that you won't need. You just want those that you changed. So usually what I do is just save the state that it is, bake, export, and then cancel the bake. So exit the program or whatever, go back, Control Z, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So keep your scenes just with the frames that you changed. Yeah. And you had a second question?
Yes. The biggest purpose of me following this tutorial is the IKEY solvers, because I didn't really understand it from Kahik's tutorial in Third Age.
I'm glad. So example.
Yeah. Thank you. Only I noticed that the circular mesh that you just made and linked the root bone to, you also used that to with other bones, like I believe the upper arm, the forearm bones, multiple bones basically. Is that something you also use, or is that just for the root bone that you use this mesh?
No. It's kind of tricky when using IKEYs for the hands and legs. What I do use is look at constraints, which I will show you. But first, I want to finish with the IKs. But if you want to use link constraints like this on hands or legs, do it. It's the way I work. Shouldn't affect how you work. If you feel more comfortable working with these types of constraints, go ahead. I mean, at the end of the day, all you need is getting the movement that you want. That's the most important part. Yeah.
Clear.
Yeah, but yes, you can use them. And I think, yes, Kahik's one actually shows this. Most people will use this. I don't. Okay.
Gotcha.
Okay. And for the IKs, one important thing is if you use an IK, as you can see, if I move it around, I'll go to out, okay. If I move it around, you'll see the position of the knee, it's in the same place. Sometimes this is not desirable because, let's say in certain positions, it has like an unnatural look when the knee itself would be more into the outer body than it is right now. So what you can do, every IK has something similar. In 3ds Max, it's called swivel angle, which is kind of weird name from my perspective. And I go here, and as you can see, I can raise the angle that this animation is made. So now I have more an exterior knee movement, which is something that I actually wanted to make. So when you're creating a key, always remember that yes, you can change the angle of the knee to give it more depth and also be more accurate, because nobody actually walks like that. Like this. It's like this. This actually does not happen. Yeah, move animations are kind of tricky, but they are symmetrical. So you kind of have the keys in the same place. Okay, so I ruined this model totally. It's beyond repair. Okay, and now the next type of constraint that I wanted to show you was the look at constraint. This is all preparing your animation. We haven't actually started animating yet, but this is the important prep time before you start animating, which makes your life much easier. I think I need to use something that has a mesh. Okay, this one does not, because with the mesh is more obvious, because we're talking about rotations. Okay, this one already has a look at animation, so I'll just I'll delete it so I can exemplify it. Okay. It's weird. Okay, I remember. Yes, this one is you won't find this one in the same place you find the other controllers. Can I delete it? Why I cannot delete it? Oh, I deleted the bone. Yikes. Okay, now it's yeah, if you Control Z sometimes, you won't get the same thing. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so look at constraint basically forces a bone to look at a certain object. For example, I'll just hide this. What we need is an object that you're looking at. Usually I'll using a box, as you have seen. So this is basically a box. Nothing's fancy, just a box. Okay. Then I click this one. Go to animations, constraints, look at constraint. Bam. And now you can see this line that goes in. Let's unhide.
Oh.
Okay, now I'll put on the keyframe. Okay, and as you can see, if I animate and just move the box, the head will automatically follow it.
Wow.
So this makes it very easy in idle animations. For example, a lot of Battle Formula 2 animations have like this chest movement and their head just looking around, looking for flowers and leaves and all that stuff. And it's very easy to just do just this. And you can do this to a new animation or old animation that already existing. You put this constraint on it, and then you overwrite the head movement. And now if I go here and just copy the key, and you can do all kinds of stuff. And this is what I use also for hands. In this case, they are not needed, but basically I constrain the rotation of the hands using the same technique. So yeah, you can use this to move the head. Usually I use it just for the head and for the hands if needed. I haven't seen people actually used for something else, but I'm pretty sure if you come with crazy examples of non-humanoid creatures like the Watcher, this can be very useful.
Indeed.
Okay, any questions until now? I know there were like a lot, but I really wanted you to see how these controllers work and how can they help you.
I do have something kind of related. Is the when you talked about the model appearing during the animating session? You mentioned that you had to rig the model to the skeleton again before you can have the model move alongside the animation.
Yeah.
So it's not like you, for example, you import an animation and then you somehow import the model and it's automatically linked to the animation. You really have to re-rig it again to the bones.
Um, yes, but there is also something you can use, which is I use sometimes for merging animations. So basically, yes, if you are changing an animation, try to rig just the parts that you are changing. That would be easier for you. If you're doing like a full-on animation, yes, then what I do is I take the scene that has my 3D model, which is like in the idle pose, and then animate it, create the controllers, and then animate it from scratch. So basically, whenever I make a new scene, it will be from the scene that I actually rigged the model. So that's why it's always rigged.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But later I'll show you something you can use as a workaround. But the sad part is sometimes it works nice, sometimes it doesn't. So that's the nasty part. Yeah. And also for the capes, I usually import them from another model. And yes, sometimes I do rig them to see how they behave.
Yeah.
Yeah, as you can see, there was like kinda.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Capes are something different. I'll show you in the advanced stuff. Okay. Let me see if I had something else in mind I wanted to show you. Oh, nice. I'll close it for now and just open another one. Fresh. Okay, so common components I showed you IK with the swivel angle, look at, link constraint, and then link and bone hierarchy, which is like difference that I showed you between link constraint and linking normally. Okay, when you're changing something, make sure it's still loopable. As I've shown you, I always copy the first frame to the last frame, so I keep at that loop. But you must make sure that, in between also there's like a consistency to the animation. Because all the animations are loopable because they are in state machines, basically. So when they're in idle, they keep idling. When they're attacking, they keep attacking. So they need to be loopable. That's like the main thing. Okay, if you do want to change the start end of the animation, for example, you really wanted to, move many parts and they're like in a kind of weird state, do make sure they're not too much different between the end and the start. Unless you plan to also change the animation that it's linked with. For example, if you change the idle animation, be prepared to change basically every transition, like from idle to alerted. But if you change, like, for example, selected, you may need to make sure at the end of the day the transition end up in the idle animation. But if you don't want to take care of this, so to speak, do try to be in the same position, because what Battle Formula 2 has and many other game engines is like a blend. So basically you can blend two animations. So when you go from selected to idle, there's a transition, and then you have like a blending between those two animations, and you can actually set in Battle Formula 2 engine like how many frames do you want to blend. And this one is case by case, and you can be like 5. So basically what it does is blend this. So even if they're not in the same position, the engine will take care of that. But be aware that if your hand is in totally another place, the blending will look weird, and you don't want that. Okay. So basically, at this point, you can import an animation, do all your specific rigs, and then export it as a new animation. And you have a new animation. Use the export settings, put some compression there so it doesn't look janky, and it's all very nice. And this is keyframe animation, basically. As you can see, with small keys in the right places, you can create animation. And this comes with practice. But if you don't want to practice a lot, what we use is references. Like I showed you, I use the Haldir animation to actually get through the motion. So let's talk a bit about what you need to look on when you're creating a new animation. Like I said, always configure your rig before starting your animation process to be as easy as possible, because once you start animating, it's very hard to go back. You can add rigs on the fly, as you've seen on already existing stuff. You can add a controller to override, but if you animated that part and then you realized you forgot the rig, yeah, it's kind of wasted time. So be aware when you make prep time for your animations. Make prep time for your animations, and always start when you know you have all the parts that you're interested rigged. If you're starting from scratch, I do recommend having the hands using IKs. Same for the legs. The root dummy linked to a circle, so you can move the pelvis easier, and then a look at for the head. And then depending on your particular character, you can add more stuff, but this is like the bare bones you would need to start an animation properly. Okay, and as I said before, as an answer to your question, if you plan on working on a full set, because yeah, sometimes if you change the scale, you do, reuse the scenes as much as possible, especially if they are linked, because you have the starting point and the end point, basically, and then you can play around in the middle, and it's much easier that way. And you have that the last frame from the previous animation is the first frame here, and it's 100% consistent. That was the word. Yeah. Use video references. That was the part when you're if you want to do something from scratch, or you're not certain of a certain movement, use video references. For example, for the heavy soldiers, I'll open 3ds Max again. For the heavy soldiers, I did just that. I used an online video to get the walk cycle how I wanted. Let me see. I'll try and get you an example. So that is Boromir, and then there's the formation walk. No, this is something else. Oh, okay. I think it's not here, my bad. It's in the palace guards. Okay, it's not even here. but I think this is where I made the animation. Yeah, here I ended up using the same using as the tower guard reference formula too. Okay, we'll do it live again because it seems I cannot remember in which animation I actually used this. Let's take Boromir's one again. Okay, so you want a video references, and this is very useful if the video itself goes frame by frame. And what I mean by that is I'll make a plane. Blender has more advanced stuff for this. It actually has some references from what I remember that you can actually use, but I'll show you the principle here, and then I'll rotate it here. Okay. In 3ds Max, you press M to open the material editor. I'll go here for the material shader type. I'll go to, actually not here. I'll go to bump. This should be diffuse. No. 1 second. It seems I cannot find. My bad. Okay, so it was this little button, and then I click on bitmap, and now he wants a bitmap, which is actually a video. Okay. Animation references. 3ds Max 8 only supports AVI and something like that. And then I assign. Okay, the resolution is kind of weird. You should probably make this like the resolution of the video itself. But basically I have this reference now, and if I hit play, you'll see the plane also moves, and this is like huge if you want to have a full-on references. Usually here the frame rate here is a bit slower, so at the end of the day you'll speed up this, but it's great for references. And I'll just make the length of this 100 frames, so the animation stops, but you can see here the video. And yes, I do recommend to have a front view and a side view. Oops. So basically having like this. And what you do is, I'll go to shading. You'll align this one. You can scale it, whatever. It's not that important as long as it does the job. And here as well. I see. I need to go to the right. Okay, so basically at this point, you can use this reference to create your animation. And yes, remember that yes, you need to make it loopable. You need it to have it relatively short because you need to keep the cycle. You need just like one cycle for walk. As you can see, this is like 25, so this is like a cycle. But if you don't find online, which happened to me because sometimes it's very hard. For example, I wanted to do like the animation of certain objects that are like certain persons, not objects, that are in the background and you cannot see them. Don't be afraid to actually make them yourselves, like using a phone camera and film yourself doing the motion and then use it as reference. Nobody will judge you. I mean, a bit, but nobody will see it you doing. So if you have two phones, then it's even better. Then you can do the front and the side part as well. And it's like a huge help. Then yes, you'll have to synchronize them yourself. But it's a huge help, especially for example, attack animations. Attack animations are very hard to do because they are very swift. There are very large movements, very big motions. And so it's very hard to make them without having a reference. I can show you. I don't know if I have one right now, but basically one of Friendwheel's animation, or actually two of them, were using me as reference so I can do them. Because they were very specific movement that I couldn't find online because he's an elf and he moves a certain way. Okay, any questions now?
I don't have.
Okay, everyone is asleep. Okay, so I think we hit more than an hour, I think. Would you like to continue, or do you want to pick what's the rest of this sometimes next week?
I can go on for longer, but I'm not sure about the rest.
Let's make a vote. You know what? I think it's enough information for one day. And maybe next time we'll see each other. Maybe you've even had the time to practice a bit if you wanted to do your own animations. So I think we'll just end it here for now.
Okay.
And do some more advanced stuff next week.
Nice.
Yes. Okay. So I showed you the import part, use video references, blah blah blah. And then creating your SQL and animation merge and creating full animation. So that part that I showed you, that you could import an animation to already rigged stuff, that's doable. But I'll show you next week because it will be shorter. Okay, question now, if you're still here, are you interested in seeing something more heavy based? Also, it will kind of be more 3ds Max oriented because it gets into some details that it doesn't matter which software you use, it probably has its own way of doing it. But I'll show it for 3ds Max 8 how you can do capes in Battle Formula 2. If you're actually interested in this kind of stuff, or I'll just skip it.
Sure, no, I'm interested.
Yeah. Me too.
Nice. Okay then. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking your time for this. I for one second I almost felt like I'm gonna be alone. But I'm glad you joined anyway, and I hope you learned something.
Oh yeah.
And you
Absolutely,
took home some stuff and start animating your own stuff, because we really need more animators in Battle for Middle Earth 2. All right.
Completely agreed.
I'll